I recently passed the 100-hour mark in Throne and Liberty, so I thought now would be a great time to do a full deep dive review to explain my experiences in the game as a somewhat casual player. The game has been out for almost 2 months. I know players that have 3 or 4 times as much playtime as me. But I want to dive into what stood out to me in Throne and Liberty, as well as where the game I think is falling short and whether it's really worth investing your time into if you're looking for a new MMO to play in 2025 and beyond. And right up front, I do want to talk about the cost, because that is something that sets Throne and Liberty apart from many other games on the market currently, because Throne is a free-to-play MMORPG. There is literally zero cost to download it and to get started with this game, and that's a huge deal considering you can easily drop 100 hours into it, as I have done myself as a free player. Now obviously the game has to make money somehow, and so there are several paid features in the game, which we'll talk about more in detail later, including the cash shop for cosmetics, paid time savers and upgrade materials, and a controversial cash marketplace where players can buy and sell best-in-slot gear and traits, which, I mean, that's a whole nother discussion in itself. But yeah, in theory, you can play Throne and Liberty completely free if you want, and that's definitely true if you are a more casual-focused player and you're not concerned about getting those shiny best-in-slot gear traits. Now first, I want to discuss visuals and the world, as this is definitely one of the strengths of Throne and Liberty as an MMO. Basically, from the moment I stepped into this game, I was really impressed by the visuals and the style choices that Throne and Liberty presents. If you didn't know, Throne and Liberty was developed using Unreal Engine 4, which is widely known for its ability to render high-quality graphics in an open world, and this game puts the Unreal Engine on full display, and it's really just a gorgeous thing to look at. This allows the game to deliver, detailed textures, realistic lighting, and these huge open environments, which all contribute to the game's immersive visuals. Additionally, the game supports DLSS, which is going to provide, even smoother frame rates without compromising visual quality, of course, depending on your machine, because Throne and Liberty is available both on PCs and consoles currently, so your performance is going to vary depending. But just look at the quality of these environments, for example. Not only are they visually impressive, but there's also a strong sense of style that really stands out, plus some unique color palette choices that appear throughout the game's different environments and landscapes that really make it an impressive overall experience. Plus, in most cases, once you've loaded into the world in Throne and Liberty, load screens are then greatly minimized when transitioning to new areas. There are no separate zones in Throne and Liberty, for one thing, so if you're standing on, the top of a mountain and you see a new area in the distance, you can literally run or just glide over to that next location without loading into a new zone. Even areas which are technically separated instances, such as the co-op dungeons, those also load seamlessly as your character teleports from one area to the next. So once you get used to this, how fluid the game transitions are, it's kind of hard to go back actually to the other older style MMOs that have long load screens. Character models in Throne and Liberty and animations also are very impressive as well. From, textured armor to lifelike skin and hair options. I think one of the highlights of Throne and Liberty actually is this extensive customization for players to create their characters. You can adjust, tons of different features, from facial structure down to hairstyles, body proportions, skin tones, basically everything. So compared to other MMORPGs, Throne and Liberty's character models are definitely top tier, and, character animations are also smooth and well designed with some great visual effects for spells and abilities. So the combat style is actually very dramatic and it just looks really impressive. Definitely one of the best looking MMOs on the marketplace right now, so that is a huge plus. Briefly here, I'll touch on the story because this was not really a highlight for me, but I know it is important to many players. For an MMO, Throne and Liberty's main story is kind of like just passable at best, I guess. It is voice acted through cutscenes and the quality is there. Again, owing largely to the visual and character design elements which are already in Throne and Liberty, which I said were really well done, but the narrative of the story itself is kind of disjointed and basically confusing. Most of the time, the main story of Throne and Liberty takes place over multiple chapters, which introduce you to characters, but it's loosely connected, and there's different adventures that you get placed into basically all over the world, which in a lot of cases, they kind of seem unrelated to what came before. And I'm not even really sure what the story was at this point. I mean, there was a big bad guy who appeared at some point, I guess, and I defeated him. I don't know if there's more coming later on, but really the story for Throne and Liberty is just okay. It's bare minimum for an MMO, so I guess it's fine. Not a lot of people play MMOs for the story anyway, but if you're coming from a game like The Elder Scrolls Online or Final Fantasy XIV, then Throne and Liberty is not even close to that in terms of narrative. I think it also suffers a bit from some translation issues with the original, game design coming from a Korean developer as well. So these are just things to keep in mind if story and narrative is really important to you. But if you push through the story, it's going to take roughly 10 hours, which again is not terrible for an MMO style of game, but if you're looking for that higher level of storytelling, it's just not really here. So that may be something for you to consider if you're going to pick up this game or not. But the best thing by far about Throne and Liberty is definitely the gameplay itself, including the combat, solo and group dungeons, PvE and PvP content, the huge variety of potential builds, and then theory crafting that you can take part in, which of course is my favorite part of any MMO. So let's dive into that section next. So other than the main story, what can you do in Throne and Liberty? Well, there's a decent mix of gameplay options here. As you level from 1 to 50, I would say the majority of what you'll be doing is PvE focused. So there's like 6-player co-op dungeons, which you can start joining around level 20 to 30. There's also a solo tower dungeon, which has you progressing through increasingly more difficult levels as you try to solo unique bosses and challenges, which was pretty fun. There's also open world dungeons, which you can enter at any time. You can think of these as like public dungeons in ESO, but much more challenging. So some of these will start around level 25, while others aren't really available until max level. And these open world dungeons are a lot of fun as you can complete contracts within these areas, again, either solo or in a group. And those are going to let you earn rewards, epic quality gear, important upgrade materials. But this is also the first time where you might actually encounter open world PvP, as these dungeons flip to PvP status at midnight. That's game time, and then they return to being PvE only once sunrise happens. So it's a really interesting mechanic there that you definitely need to be aware of. Now, there are also world bosses, which can be flagged as either PvE or PvP encounters, so that adds another layer, but that is what I would consider more endgame content. And there's also 3v3 arenas and guild wars, which obviously are entirely PvP focused. So one thing you need to keep in mind with Throne and Liberty is the endgame content, which is, farming bosses, the guild wars that I mentioned. A lot of that is going to be PvP focused, and that's where I see some players starting to fall off the game, especially if you don't like PvP-based content. Now, I'll talk more about this later on, but this is something to keep in mind. Again, I have well over 100 hours in the game, and I did very limited PvP as I didn't really enjoy it. So there's definitely a lot you can do that is not PvP-based, but to get the best gear and the best loot and really be engaged in, endgame activities, you're going to need to join a guild and you're going to need to PvP. That's just how this particular game works. Now, moving on to builds and theory crafting next, one thing that I enjoyed about Throne and Liberty is you can play any type of build that you want with just one character. That's because in Throne, you don't pre-select your class at the start. Your class is instead determined by your active weapons. So as you level up from 1 to 50, you unlock more weapon skills and passives, and you can freely switch between your two equipped weapons at any time. Now, this is not like New World or ESO either, where you need to equip a weapon to level it up to unlock its skills. Weapon skills and passive skills in Throne of Liberty are instead tied to your player level. Again, not to your weapon skill level, it's tied to your player level. So that was actually really nice to be able to experiment with basically every weapon and build possible once I hit level 50, because I had everything unlocked at that point, which was awesome. There's also a separate weapon mastery system where you do level up those specific weapons, but that's mostly to gain passive bonuses, not the actual skills. So once I hit level 50, I tried basically everything I could think of. I played a tank using sword and wand. I played a healer using wand and staff. I played a ton of different open world and solo builds using greatsword, bow, daggers, and basically everything else in between. Each weapon combination does feel unique for the most part, and most of the skill options were really well done. I also like how you can slot 12 active skills at any time, spread between your two chosen weapons, and then you can even cast skills from your backup weapon while you have your main hand weapon active, and vice versa. So there's really no need to, quote, weapon swap in this game, like you have to in other MMOs, like ESO or in New World. So again, you can use any skill at any time from your two equipped weapons, which does feel much smoother, and weapon combos felt great. Now, in addition to skills and passives, the global release of Throne and Liberty included a fairly new feature to the game in its Korean version called skill specialization. And this took my theory crafting and builds to a whole nother level, really. This is essentially like scribing from the Elder Scrolls Online, where you can give each skill 2 to 3 different affixes or morphs or upgrades, whatever you want to call them. And many of these are complete game changers for that particular skill. For example, you can take the Greatsword Brawler skill and give it enemy aggression stacking to essentially turn it into another taunt skill for your tank build. Or you can give the AoE heal from the Wand skill line magic regeneration, so it heals and gives mana back to your group at the same time. Now, there weren't a ton of options in the system, and many were repeated, such as increased range, double casting, or increased duration, but there were definitely a lot of unique options as well, like I mentioned, and overall, it just really felt like a well-designed system. So I will say here, if you like theory crafting different builds and play styles, you can do that a lot in Throne and Liberty, which is a strength but also a weakness when we talk about progression next. So the progression systems in Throne and Liberty are extremely granular, and this can definitely be a turnoff for some players. Basically, everything in the game can be leveled up from basic or common quality all the way to epic or purple quality. And this includes your weapon, your armor, your accessories, but even your skills and your passives. Each of these has its own upgrade path, like growth stones, for example, to upgrade equipment, and skill books to upgrade skills. But there are also separate growth stones for weapons versus armor versus accessories, and then separate types of books for skills versus passives. And then each tier of upgrade, like common, rare, and epic, are also divided into different growth stones or skill books. And each growth stone or skill book itself requires several materials to craft just one version of that book. Then every item or skill has anywhere between like 5 to 9 levels per rarity. Say that you have a blue greatsword, for example. You can level up that greatsword from blue quality level 1 all the way to blue quality level 9. To go from level 1 to 2 might take 10 growth stones, but to go from level 2 to 3 might take 15, and to go from level 3 to 4 might take 20, and so on. Now, once you start actually playing the game, it definitely starts to make more sense, but at the same time, the way that the game is structured in upgrading your skills and your gear means that to get something to max level is going to be a huge investment of both time and resources, literally hundreds of consumables just for one item or for one skill. But going back to my review as a casual player, did I really care that all of my skills weren't leveled up all the way to max level? No, I didn't really care. I wasn't playing enough hours in the day to get all the level up materials that I needed, but I was fine with that, and my skills were still strong enough, even if they weren't at max rank. Again, if you're going in as a casual player, just know that you're probably not going to max out everything, and make sure that you're okay with that. But I think the bigger issue comes when you want to change your build to something different, let's say a different set of 2 weapons, well then all of those upgraded skills and gear could be wasted depending on how different your build is. Now yes, there are some systems like skill experience transfers and gear experience transfers, which are also in Throne and Liberty, which are going to help with that. But this is still a huge nuisance overall. So my advice would be to play the game first to try out all the weapons and skills, the different combinations, start to understand the playstyles that you like, and then once you settle in on a build, then you can start upgrading it. Don't upgrade things until you're really sure that you want to go in a specific direction, because even those transition or transfer materials are limited. Now, I want to circle back to the cash shops and the real money auction house that I talked about earlier, because this does affect your progression as well in Throne and Liberty. As I said earlier, there are several pay to speed up progression mechanics available in the game, which are going to make life much easier for those players who want to swipe a card. And that's just the way it works with free-to-play games, so keep this in mind when you get into it. But the basics here include paid cosmetics and outfits, pets, weapon skins, and such, which really have no impact on the gameplay itself, and a battle pass with both a free tier and a paid tier, which costs $10 US, and a leveling pass with both a free tier and a paid tier, which is another $10. So if you download the game, which is free, and then you decided to pay for both the battle pass and the leveling pass, that would cost you $20 all in. Now, why would you want to do that as a casual player? Well, Both the paid battle pass and the leveling pass are flooded with upgrade materials, including skill books and growth stones for gear, so you would roughly double the amount of upgrade materials that you would normally get as a free player in that first month of playing the game if you had both the paid battle pass and the leveling pass. Now, if you are looking to try out a lot of different builds and a lot of different play styles, then this might be worth the $20 initially for you because it's going to give you many more options in how you play and upgrade your character. Especially if you play something for a while and you like it, but then you eventually change your mind. This is going to help you. But I would really only recommend the battle pass and the leveling pass for maybe the first month or so, because by then the materials will start to get redundant and you'll basically settle on your final build. Now the cool thing is there's no subscriptions with Throne and Liberty. There's no locked content. So once you feel like you got what you needed to upgrade your character, again, I wouldn't bother with any of the battle passes, and obviously you would only need the leveling pass one time. But the player auction house, which I mentioned earlier, is where things can get a little bit messy. Here is where players can sell powerful, god drop gear, and it is expensive, like hundreds of dollars. Players can also sell perfect trait drops, which you can then apply to your own gear to give it the best in slot traits. And again, all of that is going to cost a lot of Lucent, which is the paid currency that you can buy with real money. Of course, if you get those god roll drops yourself from, like a world boss or a guild event or something, you can sell those on the auction house to get more of that paid Lucent currency, and then you can buy something yourself without having to swipe a credit card. So that is an option too if you are extremely lucky or if you play a lot. But again, I will say as a casual player, I didn't have much use for the auction house. Yes, it is definitely pay to win, and if you want to get to that max gear score and have the best possible gear in the game, then the paid currency and buying your gear from the auction house is the fastest way to get there. But for me personally, the few pieces that I really wanted for my builds, I just did the grind, usually consisting of doing the same dungeon or the same contract over and over for a few times until I got what I wanted. So this could be a much longer video. I don't want it to get too big. The final verdict, I think, on Throne and Liberty is this. As a casual player, there's going to be a lot to enjoy here with very minimal risk to your wallet. We're talking free to play plus a potential $10 to $20 investment if you want more of those upgrade materials at the start with the battle pass or the leveling pass, but that's essentially it. With that investment, you can get to max level. You can do every single PvE co-op dungeon in the game. You can do all of the solo trials. You can do all of the main story, all of the side quests, contracts. You can join a guild and do guild challenges. There is easily 100+ hours of content to do here before you hit endgame and things start to get more pay-to-win focused. So is it worth your time to jump in Throne and Liberty for that initial investment of $0 to $20? I would definitely say yes, it is. Beyond that, we have new dungeons coming soon, probably new weapon types in the future, I would guess as well. So that may keep you coming back even more in the future. Personally, I am still playing here and there. I'm trying out different builds when I have the time. And I have those posted here on the channel or on the website, hacktheminotaur.com, if you are interested. But for now, I hope that this guide helped you decide whether you want to play Throne and Liberty. If you're not already, or if you are playing, maybe this helped you decide whether to keep moving forward or not. Either way, if you found this guide helpful, do me a huge favor and crush that like button so that YouTube knows to share this video with others. It is massively appreciated. I'll have links down below for some of those other builds and guides if you want to check those out as well. And as always, thanks again for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.